I'm sorry, I can't hear you over the music.
Turn my mic up. Hey, y'all. Welcome to Cross Politic on the Fight Lab Feast Network. Thank you for joining us. Pastor Toby, Chalk Knox. I'm the Water Boy. And we are the fastest growing rowdy Presbyterian conservative network in the world.
You're right.
In the world.
Message.
Are there any other rowdy Presbyterian networks?
I don't know. But I'm pretty sure we're the fastest growing.
That's on right now.
That's on right now.
That you're watching.
Facebook Live. So thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for joining the club. Make sure, for those who have been thinking about it, now that you know we're the fastest growing rowdy Presbyterian network in the world, you join that when you join the club.
You want to be part of that.
Absolutely.
Message. And you get a shirt.
And you get a T-shirt and all the stuff that comes in the club portal.
Did you get Ben a shirt?
I did. Ben got a shirt.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sitting on it.
Oh, okay. There we go.
It's for your mouth right now.
You know, I was going to say.
Well, I wanted to go here.
Well, yeah, that's not going to do much to stop the Rona, but yeah, it makes your hair look good.
We have with us in the studio today Dr. Ben Merkle. He doesn't know how to wear face masks, but he is New St. Andrews College's second president in the history of the college. You were previously an undergraduate dean. You hold a D.Phil in Oriental Studies and an MST in Jewish Studies from Oxford University. That's in England, so watch out. He also studied theology at Greyfriars Hall. Dr. Merkle has taught the freshman introductory theology course, Lordship, and Hebrew. He has also taught Anglo-Saxon.
What?
He became president. I'm telling you, watch out. He became president in 2015. He also has served as a minister. He's an elder at Christ Church here in Moscow. He also has previously served as a campus pastor with Collegiate Reformed Fellowship. He also drove tanks in the Army.
Hey,
where's the button?
Hey, now.
Where's the button?
Wait for it. It's a little late.
You can't say Army, though.
No.
You can't say.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, dude.
Wow.
Yeah.
Pastor.
That was like that was a faux pas.
That's big.
My apologies.
What tanks did you drive?
Actually, I started on an M60 and then switched to an M1A1, so I got to drive both.
Marine.
Wow.
Oh, what's the difference?
It's night
You
and
wouldn't
day.
know, Gabe.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know.
Well, give me an example of one of the differences. Like
well,
bigger
I mean,
muscle,
like,
more gun power.
Computers. I mean, the M1A1, like the M60, you could go about 25 miles an hour and then your treads fall off. The M1A1, you could go 50 and you could just spin it,
do donuts and all
jump
stuff.
it,
Wow.
all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
I want. That's the one I want.
Maybe one of the most significant things, though, on your resume is, I believe this is correct, you were one of the founding editors of the world-renowned Crack House Chronicles.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
Is that true? You know about the Crack House Chronicles?
What is the Crack House?
I believe
Chronicles?
you wrote a little in that, didn't you?
I don't know if I may have contributed.
These are my
once.
elders writing in the
I
crack
thought
house.
you did, yeah.
What's going on here?
I found some old copies recently, and it was pretty hilarious seeing some of the names in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all want to explain yourselves?
So, there was a house called the Crack House.
The Crack House was where I lived,
And
then-
my brother lived there after you.
Yeah.
After you. Yeah.
and then
And he's a pastor now and president.
we turned it into a newsletter for like ministry, and so it was the Crack House Chronicles.
okay.
One of the highlights was my wife did a series of illustrations that were, the precious moments.
Right.
She did her own version of precious moments, but it was like the little known tales from the Bible that didn't normally make it into the precious moments.
Okay.
So it was like
Did she do a David holding Goliath's head or anything
we
like
didn't
that?
get there, but we did
Okay.
get Eglon getting killed with
Yeah.
the sword.
Yeah.
And,
With the
Precious
fat-
moment.
yeah,
That's a
and I
precious
think
moment.
she got
Jail.
jail.
Precious moment.
Can't miss that one.
Yeah.
You are also the author of the book The White Horse King, The Life of Alfred the Great.
He wasn't real.
And oh, great!
Is that a fairy tale?
and defending the Trinity and the Reformed Palatinate, which is your dissertation, right?
Yeah.
Published at Oxford University Press.
Read by at least 2 people.
How come we don't have the book? I make it 3 or 4.
It's like $100 book or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh,
His wife is Becca, who's also the author of Eve in Exile.
that's right. Oh,
Yep,
such
we had her
another
on
good
for
book.
that.
That's
Yep.
a great
and,
book.
you have 5 kids.
Oh,
And
they baptized, right?
They are.
Okay.
yeah,
And,
Go
and
baptize your kids if
two
you
of
have
them are
children.
NSA.
3.
Three?
What?
3 at NSA, yeah.
Wow.
Right now?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was pleased
Wow,
that they were. He told us right before we started recording that they were discussing this morning what sound effects that
Yes.
we should have for him. Although we couldn't quite come up with any of their.
That's why we got this one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Wait for it.
Wait for it.
So Ben, thanks again for come back on.
Thanks very much for having me.
You've been here before, and you still came back.
I did.
Which is always it's actually really encouraging.
Yeah.
Short-term memory loss. So.
Thank you for that.
He had the corona.
Also, I just invite everybody else too, guys. We are actually live on Facebook and YouTube. So if you have any questions for the good doctor, you can go ahead and shoot those out right now.
Type them in the comments. And
I'll watch Facebook. Gabe, you watch YouTube.
You got it. Okay, because I'm not watching anything.
I'll watch YouTube.
So, Ben, you're the president of a small classical Christian college, and this Corona crazy has just blown up.
Yeah.
Speaking of grenades, things blowing up. We've got we got sickness. We got people getting sick, spreading something around, and there are a number of places where there's some hot spots for that. You've got everything closing down. How is NSA handling this current deal?
Yeah, it's crazy time, that's for sure. So we had to switch to all online, and God's providence, we had just the previous summer had actually got ourselves all set up on an online platform, and this is God's sovereignty, because we weren't anticipating anything. It was just purely an in-house. We decided we wanted a platform, so we had it all ready and queued up. So it really took about 20 seconds to say, you know what, we're online. Here's how we're doing it.
Switch it over.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's been good, and it's what's surprising is how many students still want to stay in town, even though all their classes are all 100% online.
Yeah.
And it's been, if you had to do this nonstop for college, I think it would be a real loss. I think. But given that they've already got years of getting to know their classmates and their teachers, I think that we're able to do fairly well and give basically the same education. And there has been some kind of innovation that it sparked in us where it's like, okay, figuring out how to use the online platform to actually improve what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's been really good. And some of that will stick with us when we're able to go back into person. But definitely wouldn't want to do it for very long.
Right. So what do you see going on in terms of just the bigger picture? Like how do you think the higher education world is going to be affected, changed by all this?
So some of it is it's going to be massively changed, and some of it is it's just going to make visible what was already there in a much clearer way. Like one of the major things that I think is happening is NSA from the beginning, we've never taken the federal money. We don't take Pell Grants. We don't take the federally subsidized student loans because of the strings that are attached to it. And there are other principles as well in play. Anyhow, what's really interesting, and this is beyond just the world of education. I think industry across the board is getting this, where you have a governmental suppression of all industry that is excused because the government money will come in and lift it back up.
Right.
Which means basically we're all socialists now. I mean,
Thanks.
Well, like as a college, so we're not taking that money, and that's the interesting thing right now is my email inbox is just a long list of emails of new news about the new money that we're going to get.
Right.
Like, this is a cash cow for colleges. They're going to make a killing on this.
Right.
And a lot of the debate is like, do we don't give any refunds to your students? Yeah, because you got to wait for the federal subsidy to come or else you won't get it reimbursed. But there's all kinds of maneuvering that's to get the most out of this.
Get the maximum amount of money.
Yeah. And so I think one of the big things is we're all federally subsidized now. I mean, NSA is distinct, but I don't think very many colleges will make it through where they're not basically on the government paycheck.
Right.
And there's just no way that's not going to have lingering implications down the road, where it just really changes the way we think about funding college.
What do you mean by suppressing business? Like how is the government involved in suppressing business, particularly in the higher education world?
Well, you can't have class. So
so you're talking specifically about this particular moment is suppressing, like you can't meet.
Everything's closed down. You have to close it down and send everybody home. Now you can maybe, we're trying to be versatile and go online, and that's what most of the schools have done.
Right.
But you're closing the dorms, you're closing the cafeteria, you're closing all of these things.
Got it.
And then, so now we're in a financial emergency, but that's okay because the federal government's going to come in and take care of it.
Got it.
But basically, that makes it so you can't be an independent institution that is not reliant on the government. And I think that's a lot larger than just colleges. I think a lot of businesses are having that where you have principles about I want to work for my money. I want to earn my keep. I want to be a productive, member of the church and tithe and all of this.
Right.
That's taken away from you, and you're told your principles, you can't have them. Because if you want to eat, you have to take the government money. That's the only way you're going to get through it.
Right. Because they've taken away everything else.
Yeah.
Right. The story of Joseph keeps coming back to me. We've brought this up on the show in the last couple of weeks, where Joseph basically helps and sets up the mechanism for Israel to become long-term enslaved to Egypt over the next 400 years, and that kind of seems like a little bit of what the play is going on here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's one of the things that we keep wanting to argue about at NSA is that one of our sort of overriding themes is that we want to create free men. And really, higher education is about indentured servitude right now, and we're trying to do something distinct so that we graduate free people. But now we've just seen this play run across the whole nation, and this is how you become a slave. This is how it works.
What do you mean higher? Because I graduated from the University of Idaho. What do you mean higher education?
He just said you're a slave.
He said you're a slave. So how's that? What does that look like?
Well, so I mean, there's the financial piece. You take their money, as I think you had Borton's on here say. You take the shekel, you get the shackles.
Yeah, that's right.
So you take the money, you have to answer to those dictates. I've seen Christian colleges where you're a Christian college and well-known Christian colleges where there's an incident of some sort of sexual harassment on campus. Well, sexual harassment, because of Title IX, is actually considered a federal issue because it constitutes some form of sexism, I guess. Okay. So because of that, it's a federal thing, and because you take the federal money, now federal rules about how to deal with that sexual harassment apply to you. So now you have Christian colleges spending millions of dollars on programs to teach their students how to have consensual sex.
Right.
Because that's the federal government's response to this.
That's what's required in Title IX.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now you've got so that's one place.
And it's marriage. The answer is marriage. Right. The federal government, they're teaching marriage, right?
That's the thing is, I mean, like it's sad to see Christian schools where it's like you have the answer for how you deal with this.
It's in the Bible.
And instead it's here's how to start shacking up, and which is a sad deal. But that's one way. Like ideologically, it happens. When you go down that route, you also find that the federal student loans become easier and easier to take, and then you graduate with $40,000 in student loan debt. It's another form of servitude.
Right.
And I think the last thing is that increasingly higher ed is more about vocational certification and not about deeper critical thinking, which is it's kind of a big thing to dive into, but the more you indulge that concept of higher education, the more you have people who are slaves. It's a slave mentality. Right. Instead of the person who's...
It's a worker bee mentality.
Yeah, a worker bee versus somebody who's going to argue back.
Yeah.
But
we don't want people to argue back, though. That's part of the problem.
Well, they'll pull your articles off of Medium if you try to argue with
or
them.
Google Play.
Yeah. So what you mean though is, if I understand right, the vocational certification is you get training for a particular job.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Right.
And so you've got your little certificate and you can...
degree.
Your degree. And you can plug the cog into this thing here in the assembly line. And you can do that 8 to 5 for 40 years.
Yeah.
But it's not really teaching you how the whole assembly line works or how the world works, how God made the world.
Which is really important to this moment. There's a couple different ways where I think it applies right now. So basically we think now that your college degree... the name of your college degree needs to correspond with the name of a job. Yeah. And that's the role that college has.
What's your major?
Yeah. And so that's why when you give a liberal arts answer, everybody laughs and says, oh, that's the would you like fries with that degree.
Because no one knows.
Because there's no, it doesn't feel like there's a strong career out there with that name in it. You're going to be a liberal artist. But the thing is first of all, if you're just aiming for certification for one particular job, what do you do when the market changes like it just did?
Right now.
Yeah, when everything gets wiped out.
So 20 million people are jobless.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's not true to real life. I mean, if we go through and all list our undergraduate degree.
Right.
I was chemistry, and now I'm a college president. And you go around and ask people, you find that no, we all move all the time.
Yeah.
It's far better to get a diverse, like the kind of degree that sets you up to handle any number of different circumstances rather than just one particular career.
Is that true about all liberal arts degrees? Because isn't there a difference between liberal arts degrees across the board? So University of Minnesota, I know people who get a liberal arts degree from there, and they don't look anything like people who come from NSA.
Yeah.
So when people talk about how they are criticizing liberal arts degrees, they usually have a model of it that doesn't look like the traditional liberal arts degree, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's totally true. And that has to do with the fact that we've basically removed Christ from education. So if you have a worldview that is built on Christ, then you have this solid rock. You have this firm foundation. And then this education can get really rigorous. When you remove Christ and just have the liberal arts without Christ, then basically you're right. You do get a
Can
course.
I have fries with that?
Well, it's like...
Well, actually, I would say it's even worse than that.
Yeah.
Because actually, I mean, you think about what are like all the most idiotic ideas that have come out of like universities in the last 100 years. I bet 80-90% of them came out of liberal arts departments.
That's exactly right.
That had rejected Christ.
Yeah.
It's like liberal arts are like this like really sharp sword.
Yeah.
It's a really dangerous weapon, and when it's hooked up to Christ and His Word, it's potent for a lot of good.
Yeah.
But as soon as you unhitch Christ from it, to borrow a phrase from somebody,
Unhitch.
you can use it to do crazy evil. I mean, but all the secularism, evolutionism, Darwinism, relativism, all the crazy,
Because they become educators in a lot of ways.
Come out of philosophy departments and lit departments.
No, I think that's really true.
Right? I mean, so that tells you how potent it is, but it can be potent either way.
Right. And I think when you blend a rigorous liberal arts education with a real Christocentric worldview, and you put those together, then you have something really, really powerful.
Yeah.
But that's just really hard to find now.
So I don't know if you saw the Babylon Bee had this. I kind of find it now. Where'd it go? They had this headline. I think you'll enjoy it. It said, "Liberal arts degrees renamed non-essential worker degrees."
During the coronavirus.
So are liberal arts and are they a non-essential business? Are they an essential business? And so we have this language being thrown around of essential and non-essential, which I want to say initially actually is kind of insulting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so the difference between the two, like if you take that vocationally oriented degree, then you're trying to name the job with your diploma. The liberal arts, you're not trying to name a job. You're trying to name certain skills and habits that you're inculcating. So the point that we're trying to give, or the goal that we have at NSA, is to teach our students how to be critical thinkers, clear communicators, to have a worldview that's coherent and founded on Christ. It's these soft skills about having a mind, and I would say that that's the thing that America has lost at this moment.
Their mind.
We absolutely need.
That's absolutely right.
Critical thinking right now. I mean, we're in a famine of that.
So being able to read I don't know, data models, for example.
Exactly.
And
write data models.
And figure out what numbers are we missing. Are there any key numbers here that don't make sense?
Is that a legitimate denominator?
It's a critical thinking skill.
Yeah. Gabe and I were talking about this a couple days ago. Here's an interesting bit of data from the last 50 or 60 years, because over the last 60 years is where we've seen this transition from liberal arts dominating higher ed to now more vocationally oriented degrees.
Okay.
And during that time, if you go back to the year 1961 and look at how many hours per week a college student had to devote to their study what did the average college student spend on school? It was a 40-hour week.
That includes classroom and homework.
That's going to lectures and then doing all the work.
Full-time job.
Exactly. It makes total sense. It's equivalent to a full-time job. Since 1961, that number has dropped every single year, so that in 2011 to 2015, the average student was spending 17 and a half hours a week on school.
Wow. So from 40 to 17 and a half
less
hours.
Than half.
But it's actually more than that, because think of it this way, because in that 40, let's say they were doing the minimum number of classes, so 12 hours so that means if it was 12 hours of class, 28 hours of study.
Yep.
If you take 17 and a half, they still have 12 hours of class.
Ooh.
5.5 hours of homework.
So that's
wow.
less than a fifth of the amount of time.
Right.
So that
grades went down, right? I mean, grades went down, right?
That's the other interesting thing is during that time, in 1960, the A was given to 15% of students. Okay, 15% of students got an A in college.
Okay.
And since 1960, that number has climbed. In 1998, I believe the A became the most common grade given in a college class, and right now 45% of college students get an A. So,
wow.
So if you think about it, then your 1960s forefather had to study more than 5 times as much as you do in order to be ready for that class, and yet you are 3 times more likely to get an A. So either today's college students are the most amazing generation of intellectuals and natural geniuses that America's ever seen, or that shift from a rigorous liberal arts education to the professional education, rather than being actually making it more difficult, has made it way easier.
Wow.
Nicholas on Facebook is asking, how can a college effectively educate students in the liberal arts while simultaneously teaching them a specific skill? Do they just need to do 4 years in liberal and then figure out another 4 years in a career or something like that?
So I would say, first of all, I think we have to question whether those college degrees are actually preparing people well for careers. Mm-hmm. I mean, most careers, from what I can see, you don't learn how to do that job till you show up at that job.
That's right.
And so what the workforce needs is not people who have particular certifications, but people who have the ability to learn and to teach themselves, to be able to be somebody who walks in and can figure it out within 3 months and roll on.
Because that company's unique.
Yeah. Oh. And that's not to say that there are certain certifications that you need for certain careers. But in general, those certifications tend to be a lot more easily and more directly given in a shorter period of time, or as they're introduced to their job. But I do think, I think if you're going to be an engineer, you have to get a mechanical engineering undergrad. That's just, there's no getting around that. If you want to be a nurse, you need a nursing BA. If you want to be a doctor, you can do a liberal arts undergrad and go on to med school from there. Yeah. There are certain careers that I think you have to pick a path carefully for.
But the liberal arts foundation, though, you're saying, is useful for all of those.
Right. Because, well, first of all, imagine going back to your 18-year-old self and saying, 18-year-old Toby, I trust you to plan the rest of my life. I trust you to pick the career path right now that will be like.
And you remember 18-year-old Toby?
Yeah, I knew him. It's true. Yeah, I think of myself. The one thing I remember saying when I was 18, my mom asked me what I wanted to be, and I said, I don't know, but I know I don't want it to have a desk or books.
Look what God gave you.
Look what God did.
Yeah. Do you think it's different now with your kids since they've grown up in this culture, in this community, with their 18-year-old self is a lot different than your 18-year-old self, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By a long shot. But that has more to do it has more to do with spiritual maturity and there's an intellectual maturity there. But it's not like my son who's a junior at NSA. It's not like he knows for certain. He has a general sense of where he's headed. But when you study with an open path, there's a lot less fear about I'll try this for a while, and then I'll try this for a while, and I'll figure out how God made me and what works for me. And all of us, your 40-year-old self has a lot different priorities than your 30-year-old self. And what's more important is that you have built into yourself the ability to adapt and grow. So actually,
I want to add something here just real quick. My liberal arts training has actually given me far more confidence as an entrepreneur than my schooling at University of Idaho. Yeah. When I went through Greyfriars was huge for me. Mm-hmm. When I went through Greyfriars, I remember coming out on the other side of that 3 years later, just being far more confident as a husband, far more confident as someone who's in this business world trying to figure things out, and because I knew much more about God's world. Yeah. I had far more context of what God was doing, and I had far more confidence in my relationship with God. Yeah. To take risk. Yeah. It's all connected in how we see the world and how we view ourselves in relationship to that world and what we want to do moving forward and everything. So you're right. When 30 years old, my ideas and dreams and aspirations were very different than what I'm doing now that I'm 40 years old. But the liberal arts degree has prepared me far more. I didn't get a degree, but going through Greyfriars was kind of my big liberal arts splash. Mm-hmm. It actually made me far more adaptive. When I was 30, I was working for a company, and then when I was 36, I was doing consulting, and then when I'm 40, I'm doing cross politic. I never would have been able to do that if it wasn't for Greyfriars. So
I was thinking of there's a book by Nassim Taleb called Anti-Fragile.
Yeah.
And and the whole point of it, I mean, he's sort of this crazy, eccentric Lebanese mathematician guy, but the whole
I emailed with him about coming on the show.
Oh, good.
And I get this email like he's like, I'm not doing any interviews.
Okay, yeah.
But sorry, thanks.
It's like it's a thick slog, but he's sort of like But the whole point of it is the idea that God has made the world in such a way that there are certain things that actually get stronger and better the harder you hit them. Mm-hmm. You think about working out, like your muscles,
bones.
If you don't exercise, if you don't break them down, they don't get bigger. They don't get stronger. Yeah. There are he's got different categories, but the anti-fragile category is the one in which basically the harder you hit, the harder you're stressed, the better you get, the stronger you get.
Right.
And I think there's something about that where that's the way things are supposed to be in our Christian walk.
Yeah.
If you're united to Christ by faith, everything that God brings you makes you better. Mm-hmm. Everything that God sends you makes you stronger.
Right.
And liberal arts, I think, really are. I mean, when we talk about the free arts, that's what liberal arts are. Mm-hmm. Free arts. We're talking about the Christian arts.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the way God made the world to make free men and women. And that freedom is rooted in Christ.
Right.
And so liberal arts, I think, are just another way of saying an anti-fragile education.
Yeah.
So that no matter what hits you, economically, health-wise, business-wise, whatever.
That's right.
It hits you, and you're able to pivot and learn and grow and get stronger and move. It's all about allowing for sanctification.
Yeah, I've got a group of alums that I have this kind of ongoing reading group with, just going through different books. We did actually Anti-Fragile at one point too. But one of the things that we were just talking last week, I was pushing them on. Just tell me, I go around selling this NSA education all the time. I want to hear from you. Am I full of it, or is this true? Like, tell me honestly, how has it performed for you? And it was really interesting. They said what was weird is that their education, the longer they're in their professional life, the more they rely on their NSA education, because what we're focusing on are cultural leadership skills. And so when you first enter the workforce, you're just trying to figure out how you do your job.
Right.
You are just the worker bee.
Right.
But what happens is if you got a worker bee education and degree, that's where you stay. Whereas if you have the kind of education that knows how to look up and look around and think critically and figure out and anticipate the change that needs to happen and how to communicate to others and direct them, when you start to just kind of naturally act like that, you just keep moving up and up and up until you find that the worker bee skills, you don't use those at all, and everything you're doing has to do with critical thinking, communication, leadership,
writing.
Yeah, it's all of that. But I think the other thing, the Taleb's book in Anti-Fragile, I remember there was one point, and I don't think he was trying to talk about liberal arts, but it seemed to be such a strong point where he was saying, let's say you go into a bookstore and you are told, pick 10 titles here that you're going to invest in, and over the next, 20 years, you're going to make the profit off of those 10 titles.
Okay.
The temptation that everybody has is to go and look like, what's the bestseller? What's the hot new thing, and put all the money on that.
Yep.
Right.
And he said the obvious thing is ask which book has been on, which title has been sold for the longest.
Yeah.
Like which book do you know? Because that one that's hot right now, in 6 months, it's gone.
Right.
But that one that's been selling for 500 years, you can have a reasonable good guess that for the next 20 years, it's going to be there.
The market for
Calvin's
that's
commentary.
It's going to continue. Yeah.
And then we see that with degrees. I noticed just from being inside education how there are these fads that go through with degrees, and colleges are. It's all about how quickly can you reinvent yourself to offer that new degree. Like right now, it's cybersecurity.
Yep.
Like we have to have a cybersecurity degree tomorrow, and if we can't do that, we failed as a school. But the thing is okay, go back 30 years, from now, and 30 years ago, and say, what if you could be the guy that offered the VCR repair BA?
Yeah.
This is hot. Look at all of the.
Look, we're transferring from beta to VHS.
Yeah, and you got to be on this. You want to be on this now.
Right.
Well.
And there was a tiny window in which that was relevant.
It was a tiny window, and then it was gone. And then what do you do? But when you focus not on being certified for this hot new thing, but being certified to think and to act and to lead and to work hard, that is going to be your Shakespeare, right?
Right.
That lasts for hundreds of years.
That's really good.
Okay, so Jenny asked the question. She says, since not all people can afford or aspire to a liberal degree, should there be more technical schools or apprenticeships?
So I think, I do think that technical schools and apprenticeships are a better way to enter into the workforce, to receive those particular skills, because I think you can get those for far quicker and far cheaper than most colleges are giving them. Yeah. I don't think you can give the education I'm describing quickly and cheaply, but I think that you can get those much more quickly and much cheaper in a quick certification program and get into those technical skills.
Rather than going to like a 4-year school and getting that degree.
I agree. Yeah. But I would say, though, that we've I've alluded to this idea that like sort of through history, you've had this liberal arts education, which was the education your leaders got. Yeah. And then you had a vocational one, which was what the serfs all got. Well, that has a very, elitist kind of approach to it.
Right.
But I would say, first of all, as Christians, and second of all, as people who live in the technical age that we live in, we're all the free man.
That's right.
We're all
preach
the free
that,
man.
Brother. Preach. I'm sorry, I got a little excited.
But I think that education. That's why I'm so happy to see the classical Christian school movement, the K-12 movement happen, because everybody needs that. Yeah. Because just with this right now, you have more power than Henry V.
Yeah.
Right?
Kingly powers with that. That's
and you need the education that goes with how to actually use that faithfully.
Right.
And I think that education actually belongs to every man right now.
Yeah.
I just watched you do something. I love the way you do this, where you're able to have this big view and then you always narrow it down to right where you're at. You just kind of did that with the anti-fragile thing. Would you, since you have that kind of vision to do that and because you're classical education right now, what are the things that you see big scale that people are missing that's going to affect us right where we're at when it comes to COVID-19 and kind of how fragile everybody is and all of this?
Right. Yeah. Wow. That's a good question. I mean, I think going back to there's the financial picture is a big one. I think there's a real danger of us we just became a lot more socialist. A lot
more dependent on our government.
But at the same time,
everybody did, not just college. Everybody.
I think everybody did. But at the same time, there is this moment where I think we have this opportunity to actually just really appreciate our local life. Weirdly, the imposed quarantine has actually made us all suddenly aware of our neighbors, of our families, of our even I'm living in this little town, but now my kids who are in college and my kids who are at high school, they're all sitting in the living room, all on their laptops, and we're just having a lot more family time.
Yeah, sure.
And suddenly seeing just dads out on the street with their kids on the bicycle.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that, yeah.
And the parks are closed, yet we're spending more time with our kids. We're suddenly stopping and talking to your neighbor. Yeah, and it's weird how a quarantine is making that happen. Or the real weird thing, and we were talking about this earlier, is so we had to do church online for multiple weeks, and then we finally had an in-person service where we had to stay in our cars.
Yeah, we drive in.
And you drive to church, and you spend the whole time just
waving at everybody.
People standing outside their sunroofs, just waving, and suddenly our love of brother has just gotten this real severe dose of this is something we need. And so I think that there's the potential for it to all go bad, but I think there's actually a potential for us to actually ride this for a moment and love each other. The way that the church body is supposed to.
Right. That's great. So what do you think after the corona panic's over, what is education going to look like after this wave?
Yeah.
So I think that there's the federal money part. I think another piece is to go back to what I was saying about how college for the last 60 years has gotten easier. Yeah. Because it's become about vocational certification, it's become more and more of a joke.
Yeah.
And I think that forcing everybody to go online might have just opened up a lot of eyes to that. Mm-hmm. So I wonder, there are a lot of colleges, I don't have this question about NSA because I know how rigorous it is. This isn't going to change us that much.
Yeah.
Right.
But there are a lot of colleges that are going to have a hard time making the case.
Right. That
it's
better for them to be there
on campus.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are going to say, you know what? I could do this online for so much cheaper and it'll be just as good.
Yeah.
And I think that that's sad because that's not the case about college. It's the case about almost all colleges in America, right? Which is a different thing.
Right.
Yeah.
College can actually be this really rigorous time where your life is, you're given a foundation for life and you work like crazy and you become a different kind of person.
You grow.
College can be that, where you grow in great faithfulness. But most campuses, that's not what it is. And I think that this might have opened everybody's eyes to that.
So that could sort of, in some ways, sort of blow it up, like in a good way. Sort of like say the old way is just not going to work.
Yeah.
And maybe a bunch of it goes online, which is not as good, but at least the sort of the monopoly is blown apart. I mean, we've been talking about that a little bit with regard to public schools in general. I mean, one of the great things about this moment is
everyone's a homeschooler.
Nobody's in public schools right now.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm seeing people online starting to say, "Hey, this homeschooling thing's not so bad." Or
they're realizing that, they haven't been doing a great job with my kids. I'm done with you.
Right.
I've seen a lot of that too.
Now that I'm actually having to spend time with you.
Yeah.
I don't like my family.
You can't read. That's messed up.
Exactly.
13-year-old.
Yeah.
The other thing I've noticed, just in terms of the blessing of all this, is I can't remember a time where I have so frequently been thankful for all of the little things in my house and in my fridge.
Amen.
I mean, my one of the first weekends, my wife was at the store, and you got this whole, all these shelves empty. I think it was just the TP aisles or whatever. But I think there was one section where there's a bunch of vegetables that were just gone.
Yeah.
And you just think how amazingly wealthy are we as a people?
Right.
I mean, I sit there in the kitchen and I can whip up 15 different things that came from 15 different farms and 15 different states.
Yep.
And it's and Middle Eastern kings didn't have half of what I have.
Yeah.
And just thinking about how fabulously wealthy we are and how kind God has been to us is just another piece of, I hope that that's one of the things that God's people are coming through this with just deeper gratitude for, I've got cars to drive. I can go get gas whenever I want.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's getting cheaper.
I mean, but any of that could get taken away at any minute.
Yeah.
And it's God just pouring it on us constantly.
Yeah.
That's another huge blessing in this moment, even though it's all kinds of crazy too.
So how are you encouraging your students, your faculty to think? You were talking about we are kind of in the midst of this moment where there's actually a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, everyone's looking at it in fear.
Yeah.
But if we look at it that way, then we aren't going to be able to, kind of grab on, take a hold, and take those opportunities.
It's tricky. I mean, the one thing that I've tried to keep saying to people is that Christians are made for the plague. I mean, we've got such a...
Say that again.
Well, we got a heritage for that. Christians are made for the plague.
That's for your kids. Little inside joke.
No, but I mean, we have such a heritage of in the Marine Corps, the whole thing was you run to the sound of gunfire.
Yeah.
But in the church history, we've run to the plague.
Yeah.
We have, and I can think of some of my favorite theologians just from my own dissertation. I think of Franciscus Junius, who was this amazing French reformer who was an amazing scholar, an amazing preacher, systematic theologian, but he also would go with the troops out to battle to work with them, and then he ends up dying in the plague. He's the first one to challenge Arminius, and then after he dies, Arminius actually gets his position.
Okay.
But he's this amazing guy, dies in the plague, and that's what all the Christians did, was that the plague hits, you go in and you serve people.
Yeah. Wow.
And so the first thing is, we need to serve. We need to figure out how to serve. The difficulty is that can't find any sick people. so how do you serve right now? And that's where I feel like there's just a creativity that we need to figure out this is the time where the whistle blew. We need to figure out how to lay our lives down. That's what we're supposed to do.
Amen.
I just can't figure out where do we do that now? How can we give ourselves right now?
Yeah. And maybe part of that's also just there's tons of pressure being put on our leaders. Particularly our political leaders. I think of mayors and city councils and county commissioners and governors and representatives and stuff. I'm sure they're hearing from. They never anticipated this. When they got elected to these positions. Yeah. And some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them are in the middle, whatever. But you think of all the people who got put in crazy positions: Daniel and his 3 friends, Esther, Mordecai, Joseph in Egypt.
Yeah.
And they served.
Yeah.
But it really takes wisdom.
Yeah.
And they've got economies that have been crashed. and smash. They got a lot of people that are mad at them and upset with them right now. And they're probably, it's both ways. Some of them are going to start reopening economies, and they're going to have people mad at them for doing that. And other people are keeping the economies closed, and maybe it's for stupid reasons, but they got people mad at them for doing that.
Right.
Yeah. And I think Christians can be the kind of people who say, hey, I've got a creative idea. Maybe here's a way we can start, helping and serving everybody.
Yeah. Right.
And, without promising to make everybody happy. And of course, all these people too. I mean, Daniel ends up facing lions, and the three friends are thrown into the fiery furnace. And, there's risks involved in this. Yeah. But Christians were made for the risk.
Yeah. And I think, I love seeing, we had one of our students who put up a thing on Facebook. It was a new program for how to buy from downtown, the takeout stuff, and then post it online to try to drive traffic to these businesses that are trying to stay alive. I love seeing that kind of innovation.
Doing carry out with all the restaurants downtown to try to encourage the community in the middle. That's a great example of serving.
But I think the primary thing that we really have to do, and this is the thing that I think is really opening our eyes to a serious weakness in the church, is that it's scary to me how much we are consumed with this idea of social responsibility. Like our Christian virtue is social responsibility. I'll wear my mask. I'll, social distance, all that.
Right.
Instead of preaching the gospel, where it's you've got the fear of death has completely swept over our nation.
Yeah.
And it's done it with actually a very, very small percentage of actual deaths.
Right.
In the world of plagues, we're kind of like the person wearing the neck brace that, it's questionable whether he really got hit or not.
So that's right.
So you've got this fear of death all over all of the world, and we're the ones that know the answer to that.
Right.
And instead of coming out with the gospel and being bold about it is shameful for a Christian to be scared of death. We should not be scared, and we need to be preaching courage and confidence and telling people about life after death. This is our opportunity to do that.
Right.
But instead, we're taking our talking points from a secular agenda and talking about social responsibility. There's a much deeper social responsibility that we have right now.
Right.
And that's not to say I want to make light of somebody who's truly struggling with a disease. I would love to go and serve them, but the best service we can give is the gospel.
Most of us don't have those people right in front of us.
Exactly.
There are some hot spots where people can serve in those ways, but lots of us are in a place where it's just people are afraid.
Yeah, and that's all it is. You've got fear all around you, and you can at least minister to that.
Amen.
President of New St. Andrews College. I want to every time you come, I want to call you pastor because you're an elder. So, but President of New St. Andrews College, nsa.edu. Go to the website there. I want to give you two things that bother me. Okay. One, you haven't tweeted since November. and two,
it's because I stopped managing his account.
And two, you're not following me on Twitter.
I don't even know how.
You talked about helping people just now.
I know.
You just talked about it, and here it is. We can do it right here. So now you can get on your. We're gonna show you after the show how to do this, how to make this happen. If you support Rowdy Christian Media, then you're supporting the Fight Laugh Feast Network, in which we are grateful for. It's why we're able to do shows like this. If you're not supporting Rowdy Christian Media, go to flfnetwork.com or flf.com and support Cross Politic Fight Laugh Feast Network. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic. Yeah, you're not following anybody on here.